Hey everyone, welcome back to the next couple episodes of my Total Drama, Season 3 writing once again. I spent over 3 months writing this season, and this is the next batch of episodes. I'm not assuming I'll get all the episodes in this video, but I'm assuming I'll get at least 4 or 5. So yeah, if you did not know already, here's a little recap. So there's 3 teams with 2 brand new contestants. This season's Kelly and Junior. I know they're contestants from their ones race, but in this universe, they're brand new contestants, and the people who have been eliminated so far were Ripper in episode 1, then Priya in episode 2, and then Z in episode 3. Scary Girl and Z had a romantic Priya. Junior had a really good relationship before got eliminated. And yeah, so let's continue on with episode 4.
Sounds of birds and water calming music plays. Chris McLean says dramatically last time on Total Drama. Quick clips flash of Z getting voted out, Lauren almost attacking Julia and the colorful penguins losing the challenge. Chris grins into the camera. Chris McLean says, and now Scary Girl has officially gone completely off the deep end again. The Total Drama intro plays. The episode opens at the colorful penguins camp early in the morning. Kelly quietly walks through the forest holding her hidden immunity idol with a huge smile on her face. Kelly says excitedly, "Oh my god, I actually found one of these things." Suddenly, Julia steps out from behind a tree. Julia says casually, "Hey, Kelly!" Kelly instantly hides the idol behind her back. Kelly says nervously, "Oh, hey, sweetheart." Julia notices Kelly acting weird but ignores it. Instead, Julia just looks exhausted and upset. Kelly immediately softens. Kelly says gently, "Honey, are you okay?" Julia looks surprised by the question. A few seconds later, her eyes suddenly water. Julia says quietly, "Why are you being so nice to me?" Kelly looks confused. Julia says sadly, "I am literally a villain." She laughs weakly. Julia says, "I do not deserve people being nice to me." Kelly immediately wraps an arm around her shoulders like a protective mom. Kelly says, "Sweetie, everybody deserves kindness." Julia slowly rests her head against Kelly's shoulder. Kelly says softly, "Now, what is really wrong?" Julia sighs deeply. Julia says quietly, "I think I have feelings for MK." Kelly smiles softly. Julia says, "Ever since last season, after we worked together all the time and hugged and stuff, She groans, embarrassed. Julia says, "I do not know what is happening to me." Kelly rubs her shoulder comfortingly. Julia says, stressed, "But I am not a lesbian. My followers would literally freak out." Kelly immediately shakes her head. Kelly says, "Honey, it is completely okay to love who you love." Julia looks up at her surprised. Kelly says seriously, "If MK makes you happy, then that is all that matters." Julia smiles softly for probably the first genuine time all season. Julia says quietly, "Thank you." She pauses. Julia says, "I still do not understand why you are treating me like this." Kelly laughs warmly. Kelly says, "Mom instinct, sweetheart." Confessional Julia. Julia says awkwardly, "I do not know why Kelly is making me emotional right now." She sighs. Julia says, "But honestly, it feels kind of nice having somebody care about me without wanting something from me." Back at the Toxic Skunks camp, Junior, Damien, and Nichelle gather berries together in the forest. Raj eventually walks up beside them. Raj says quietly, "So if we lose again, are we thinking Axel?" Damien nods slowly. Junior says honestly, "She scares me sometimes." Nichelle looks uncomfortable hearing all this but stays quiet. Confessional Raj smiles confidently. Raj says honestly, "I feel really good this season, dude." He grins proudly. Raj says Wayne already won and Bowie got second, so now it is my turn to cook. At the Malicious Bears camp, Bowie, Emma, and Chase sit together outside the shelter. Emma smiles at Chase. Emma says, "Want to go for a walk?" Chase instantly lights up. Chase says absolutely. The two walk off together while Bowie watches them leave. Then Bowie casually walks over to Millie and Caleb. Bowie says quietly, "If we lose, we are definitely voting Chase right." Millie nods immediately. Millie says he is still our weakest player socially. Caleb agrees quietly. Meanwhile, Emma and Chase walk peacefully through the forest together. After a moment, Chase slowly grabs Emma's hand. Emma blushes slightly but holds his hand back. Eventually, they sit together in the grass. Emma suddenly looks serious. Emma says, "Chase, I need to talk to you." Chase immediately looks nervous. Emma smiles softly. Emma says, honestly, I love you. Chase looks shocked for a second before smiling huge. Emma leans forward and kisses him. Chase kisses her back immediately. The two lay together in the grass, kissing for a while. Confessional Emma. Emma sighs softly. Emma says honestly, Chase really has matured. She smiles. Emma says, but I also came here to focus on myself and play the game this time. Back in the forest, Emma slowly pushes Chase off her gently. Chase looks confused. Emma says softly, I do not want to sound mean, but I really need to focus on the game too. Chase nods understandingly. Chase says honestly same. The two smile at each other sadly before hugging tightly one last time. Emma says quietly, no matter what happens in this game, we are okay. Chase smiles softly. Chase says always. The two continue walking through the forest side by side as the camera slowly fades out. Back at the colorful penguins camp, MK lays upside down on one of the camp beds, throwing a paper ball at the ceiling over and over again. Wayne sits nearby rambling excitedly. Wayne says, okay, but seriously, who is the greatest hockey player ever in your opinion? MK groans. MK says, Wayne, I literally do not care. Wayne keeps going anyway. Wayne says, okay, what about favorite hockey team mascot? MK throws the paper ball directly at his forehead. Right then, Julia walks nervously into the cabin. Julia says quietly, MK, I need to talk to you. MK immediately blushes slightly but tries hiding it. Wayne suddenly stands up. Wayne says, wait, actually, I need to talk to MK first. Julia looks annoyed. MK sighs dramatically. Wayne awkwardly rubs the back of his neck. Wayne says, okay, so are you like lesbian? MK instantly freezes bright red. Wayne quickly raises his hands. Wayne says, no, dude, it is cool. Raj is gay too. I know how this works. MK says nervously, I am literally not lesbian. She immediately walks outside, flustered, while Julia follows her, trying not to smile. The two eventually sit together near the beach by the lake. Julia tries acting casual. Julia says, so if we lose tonight, who are we thinking? MK shrugs. MK says Wayne probably. There is a small silence. Then Julia slowly reaches over and grabs MK's hand. MK looks stunned. Julia quietly asks. Julia says, have you ever had feelings for a girl before? MK blushes insanely hard. Confessional. MK says quietly, Julia has literally always been my type. She laughs nervously. MK says, but I never told anybody I was lesbian before. Back at the beach, Julia slowly leans closer. Julia says maybe somebody here at camp. MK laughs awkwardly. Julia says, what was it? Axel? Emma? Priya? MK? Quietly shakes her head. No each time. Finally, MK just looks directly at her. MK says quietly, maybe it was you, bro. Julia's eyes widen before she suddenly smiles harder than ever. Julia immediately wraps her arms around MK and kisses her. MK kisses her back instantly. The two fall together into the sand, laughing quietly between kisses. After a moment, MK lays against Julia's chest, smiling. MK says, so are we like together now or something? Julia blushes hard. Julia says honestly, I do not know. She smiles softly. Julia says, but I cannot keep hiding how I feel anymore. MK grins. MK says, okay, babe, but we still gotta focus on the game too. Julia blushes again, hearing babe. Julia nods, smiling, while the two continue talking strategy together by the lake. Meanwhile, at the Malicious Bears camp, Millie and Caleb walk together down the beach. Suddenly, Millie notices a scroll sticking out of the sand. Her eyes widen immediately. Millie quickly pretends to trip. Millie says loudly, whoa! She secretly grabs the scroll while Caleb helps her up. Caleb says, concerned you. Okay. Millie smiles nervously. Millie says, yeah, totally. Later, inside the confessional, Millie opens the scroll excitedly. Millie reads quietly. Millie, you have just found a clue to a hidden immunity idol. Millie gasps happily. The clue reads, this idol lives in the water, but rests on land somewhere hard and gray. Find it, and you will be okay. Millie's eyes instantly widen. Millie says excitedly, the Rock Island. She immediately leaves the confessional and sprints into the ocean. Millie swims completely underwater for most of the trip before finally pulling herself onto a tiny rocky island. Hidden inside a crack in the giant stone sits the idol. Millie grabs it excitedly. Millie says yes. She quickly hides the idol as she swims back to shore. Right when she returns, Caleb walks up. Caleb says, confused, were you swimming? Millie nods awkwardly. Confessional, Millie. Millie grins proudly while holding the idol. Millie says, this season, I am finally playing for myself. An air horn suddenly blasts across the carnival. Chris McLean says loudly, challenge, time losers. All three teams gather near the giant circus tents. Chris grins excitedly. Chris McLean says, first things first. Last night's eliminated. Camper was Z. Lauren instantly glares at Julia. Scary Girl slowly walks toward her holding a measuring tape. Scary Girl says sweetly, hey Julia, what color do you want your coffin? Julia looks terrified. Scary Girl measures her shoulders carefully. Scary Girl says, I just want to make sure it fits perfectly. Chris interrupts loudly. Chris McLean says, okay, terrifying lady, save it for later. Chef pulls back giant circus curtains revealing dozens of carnival animals. Birds, monkeys, goats, llamas, zebras, and even elephants run around wildly. Chris McLean says today's challenge is simple. He points dramatically. Chris McLean says every animal has a different point value depending on how hard they are to move. Chef holds up a scoreboard. Chris McLean says your teams must work together to move as many animals as possible across your finish line before time runs out. He grins wickedly. Chris McLean says team with the lowest score loses immunity and somebody goes home. The air horn blasts. Chris McLean says go. Immediately chaos erupts. Raj and Junior carefully help guide goats toward the finish line together. Junior nervously jumps when one goat screams at him. Junior says, why does it sound possessed? Raj laughs. Raj says, you got this, dude. Nearby, Damien and Nichelle work together carrying cages full of birds. Damien smiles at her. Damien says, honestly, we are kind of killing this challenge. Nichelle grins. Nichelle says, obviously. At the Penguins' side, Julia and MK work perfectly together, organizing animals into groups. Julia says, okay, babe, grab the monkeys, I got the birds. MK smirks. MK says, yes, mom. While working, Julia glances over toward Kelly. Kelly gives her a giant proud thumbs up like a supportive mom. Julia actually smiles warmly. Later, Julia quietly walks over to Kelly while the challenge continues. Julia says awkwardly, so, we kissed. Kelly gasps dramatically. Kelly immediately hugs her tightly. Kelly says, oh my God, sweetheart, I am so happy for you. Julia laughs awkwardly. Julia says, why are you so nice to me? Kelly smiles warmly. Kelly says, because everybody deserves love, honey. Julia genuinely looks emotional, hearing that. Julia says quietly, thank you, Kelly. The two hug again before returning to the challenge. Elsewhere, Lauren casually carries an entire elephant by balancing it on one finger. Wayne stares in horror. Wayne says, dude, that is not normal strength. Scary Girl just giggles. Later, Lauren finds a zebra and suddenly freezes. The zebra's colors remind her of Z. Lauren quietly takes makeup from her pocket and paints the zebra to look more like him. Scary Girl says softly, I miss you, my love. She kisses the zebra gently on the nose before carrying it toward the finish line. Unfortunately, Wayne accidentally leaves a cage open while distracted talking about hockey. Half the penguins' animals escape back into the carnival. Julia screams angrily. Julia says, Wayne. Meanwhile, the toxic skunks and malicious bears successfully finish transporting most of their animals. Chris blows the air horn loudly. Chris McLean says, and that is time. Chef finishes counting points. Chris grins dramatically. Chris McLean says the toxic skunks win immunity. Junior cheers loudly while Raj hugs him excitedly. Chris McLean says, and the second team safe is the malicious bears. Caleb, Millie, Bowie, Emma, and Chase all celebrate together. Chris turns toward the penguins. Chris McLean says, which means the colorful penguins lose again. Julia looks furious, while Wayne gulps nervously. Lauren slowly turns toward Julia, smiling creepily again. Chris McLean grins at the losing team. Chris McLean says one of you will be heading home tonight, so get back to camp and start panicking. As the colorful penguins walk back to camp after losing immunity, immediately strategy begins. Julia and MK sit together inside the cabin looking nervous. MK gently grabs Julia's cheek and smiles softly. MK says, it'll be okay, Jules. We have the numbers, especially now that you're getting closer with Kelly. Julia smiles softly and leans into her touch. Confessional Julia. Julia smiles awkwardly, but genuinely happy. Julia says, honestly, I never thought I'd ever be comfortable enough to actually be myself on TV. She blushes. Julia says, but now that I finally am, I am not letting that psycho who got rid of Z ruin this for us. Back at camp, Lauren suddenly storms over and grabs Julia harshly by the arm. Scary girl says you are gonna regret getting rid of my boyfriend. You blonde witch. Julia immediately looks terrified. MK instantly steps between them. MK says aggressively, do not touch my girlfriend, freak. Lauren slowly smiles wider and wider. Scary girl says, well, soon you won't have one anymore. She giggles creepily before walking away. Julia breathes heavily while MK kneels beside her. MK says softly, you okay, love? Julia blushes slightly. Julia says, yeah, but we seriously need to get rid of that freak. The two exchange a villainous smirk. Immediately, Julia and MK begin campaigning. They first pull Wayne aside. Julia says, Wayne, come on. She literally threatened me. MK nods. MK says, and she is terrifying, dude. Wayne nervously nods. Wayne says, honestly, yeah, I am okay with voting scary girl, bro. Meanwhile, Lauren knows she is in danger, so she immediately starts causing chaos. She sneaks into the cabin and hides Kelly's makeup bag underneath Julia's bed. A few minutes later, Lauren walks up to Kelly holding it. Scary girl says sweetly, hey, Kelly, I found your makeup bag under Julia's bed. Kelly instantly looks confused. Scary girl leans closer dramatically. Scary girl says, I also overheard Julia saying your Botox looked ugly and that you were too old. Kelly's jaw drops angrily. Scary girl says, if you know what is right for you, vote Julia tonight. She giggles and skips away. Next, Lauren approaches Wayne. She spends several minutes making up lies about Julia manipulating everybody. Wayne slowly starts looking unsure. Night falls. The team enters the elimination ceremony quietly while thunder rumbles above them. Chef crosses his arms. Chef Hatchet says, Lauren, instead of helping your team, you painted a zebra to look like Z. Lauren smiles dreamily, hearing his name. Chef points toward Wayne. Chef Hatchet says, and Wayne. You literally let half the animals escape because you were talking about hockey. Wayne shrinks awkwardly. Chris grins while holding the marshmallow tray. Chris McLean says, all right, campers, time to vote. After a dramatic pause, Chris begins handing out marshmallows. Chris McLean says, first marshmallow goes to Wayne. Wayne cheers happily. Chris McLean says, next marshmallow goes to Kelly. Kelly smiles nervously. Chris McLean says, next, marshmallow goes to MK. MK exhales shakily while clutching Julia's hand. Only Julia and Lauren remain. Julia smirks confidently at Lauren. Julia says, that's why you are going home and you are not getting away with this. Chris suddenly interrupts. Chris McLean says, actually, the final marshmallow goes to Scary Girl. Lauren snatches the marshmallow while grinning insanely wide. Julia's face completely drops. MK screams in shock. Scary Girl stands up, laughing loudly. Scary Girl says, that is what happens when you mess with me and my boyfriend. Kelly, Julia says, wait, you voted for me. Kelly looks devastated. Kelly says, yeah, because I thought you stole my makeup bag and called my Botox ugly. Lauren starts giggling uncontrollably. Kelly slowly realizes the truth. Kelly says, wait. She turns toward Lauren, horrified. Kelly says, how long did it take you to come up with that lie? Lauren smiles creepily. Scary Girl says, do not mess with my boyfriend. Kelly suddenly tears up. She walks over to Julia sadly. Kelly says, sweetheart, I am so sorry, I should not have believed her. Julia softens instantly and hugs her tightly. Julia says it's okay. Kelly begins crying harder. Julia says, honestly, you have been more of a mother to me in these few days than my real mom ever was. Kelly tears up even more. Kelly says, thank you, sweetie. My daughter never says things like that to me. The two hug tightly. Nearby, Wayne looks upset too. Julia walks over and lightly flicks his forehead. Julia says jokingly, stop crying, hockey boy. Wayne laughs sadly. Then Julia turns toward MK, who has been sobbing quietly this entire time. Julia immediately rushes over, hugging her tightly before kissing her hard. MK kisses her back instantly while crying. Julia lifts MK up around her waist while continuing to kiss her over and over. Julia says softly, it'll be okay, baby. MK cries harder. MK says, the second I finally come out, you leave. Julia gently rubs her face and wipes her tears. Julia says, you do not need me to be a villain, babe. You can do this yourself. She kisses her again. Julia says, win this for me. Okay. MK nods, crying. Julia kisses her forehead repeatedly. Then Julia walks over to Kelly one last time, hugging her tightly again. Finally, she turns toward Lauren. Julia says, well, scary brat, you just made a really dumb move. Lauren suddenly grabs Julia and slams her hard onto the ground. Scary girl screams, never touch me or talk about my boyfriend again. Everyone gasps. Lauren calmly sits back down, giggling. MK immediately helps Julia back up and kisses her again. MK says softly, goodbye, babe. I'll win this, okay. Julia smiles sadly. She hugs Kelly one final time before walking toward the dock of shame. Confessional Julia. Julia sits quietly on the dock before smiling softly. Julia says honestly this season was not my season. She shrugs sadly. Julia says, but I finally did something I never thought I could do. She smiles warmly. Julia says I came out and I found people who actually care about me. She wipes a tear away. Julia says I want Kelly and MK to win this for me. The drone of despair lifts Julia into the air as MK watches sadly from the dock. Chris smirks toward the camera. Chris McLean says what insane chaos will happen next time on Total Drama Island. The screen cuts to black. Soft music plays over shots of the abandoned carnival in the early morning sunlight while birds chirp through the rusted rides. Chris McLean says dramatically last time on Total Drama Island. Quick clips flash of Lauren manipulating Kelly, Julia getting blindsided, and MK crying while Julia was eliminated. Chris smirks. Chris McLean says, and now one camper is heartbroken, another is completely insane, and somehow Wayne is still here. The Total Drama intro plays. The episode opens immediately after the elimination ceremony. MK walks quietly through the carnival, trying not to cry anymore. Wayne and Lauren walk ahead while Kelly gently wraps an arm around MK. Kelly says softly, sweetheart, I am here for you. Okay. MK smiles weakly. MK says thanks, Kelly. Kelly squeezes her shoulder comfortingly while Lauren quietly watches from the front of the group. The next morning, sunlight shines across the carnival grounds. At the Malicious Bears camp, Emma suddenly runs past the cabins wearing workout clothes. Confessional Emma. Emma stretches seriously. Emma says, okay, I am not losing this season because I got distracted by boys again. She starts jogging faster. Emma says this time I am locked in. While running near the beach, Emma suddenly notices Millie crouched behind a rock. Millie quietly pulls out her hidden immunity idol, smiling to herself. Emma's eyes widen instantly. Emma quickly ducks behind a tree before Millie notices her. Confessional Emma. Emma whispers dramatically. Emma says Millie has an idol. She smirks. Emma says, okay, that is huge information. Emma immediately sprints back toward camp and finds Chase. Emma says quietly, Millie has the immunity idol. Chase nearly chokes on his drink. Chase says, wait, seriously. Emma nods. Chase says, okay, that is actually terrifying. Back at the Toxic Skunks camp, Axel and Nichelle walk through the forest picking berries together. Axel says, honestly, I think Junior is dangerous long term. Nichelle looks surprised. Nichelle says, really? Axel nods. Axel says socially, he is too good. Everybody loves him. Nichelle thinks quietly before shrugging. Nichelle says maybe, but not yet. Axel sighs. Axel says, yeah, you are probably right. Nichelle smiles reassuringly. Nichelle says, do not worry. I got your back. Meanwhile, Damien, Raj, and Junior swim together in the lake. Damien floats casually on his back. Damien says, all right, Junior, kick your legs more. Junior struggles adorably in the water. Raj laughs loudly. Raj says, dude, if this lake was frozen, I could teach you hockey tricks instead. Eventually, Damien leaves the lake for a minute to grab towels. Now, only Raj and Junior remain floating together quietly. Raj smiles softly. Raj says, honestly, dude, I really want to work with you later in the game. Junior looks genuinely surprised. Junior says, really? Raj nods. Junior gets emotional. Junior says, honestly, you were kinda annoying in the first 2 seasons. Raj laughs hard. Junior says, but this season you are different. He smiles softly. Junior says you are actually kinda like the dad I never had. Raj's face immediately softens. Junior quietly explains how he grew up in orphanages and how reality TV became his escape. Junior says seeing all you guys on TV made me happy when stuff sucked. Raj tears up slightly and hugs him. Raj says, thanks, little bro. Junior then awkwardly asks. Junior says, so, what was it like figuring out you were gay? Raj rubs the back of his neck awkwardly. Raj says, honestly, it was confusing at first, but Bowie helped me through everything. Junior smiles softly. Junior asks if Raj would ever want kids someday. Raj laughs. Raj says, well, two dudes cannot exactly make a baby, bro. Junior's eyes widen in shock. Raj quickly laughs again. Raj says, but honestly, me and Bowie would totally adopt someday. Junior laughs. Junior says Wayne would be the weirdest uncle ever. Raj laughs loudly. Raj says, dude, Wayne would absolutely be Uncle Wayne. Back at the Malicious Bears camp, Bowie relaxes beside Caleb near the fire. Bowie says, honestly, sorry again for voting you out back in season 1. Caleb shrugs calmly. Caleb says, water under the bridge, man. Bowie smiles. Caleb then asks about Raj. Caleb says, you guys still doing good. Bowie instantly smiles proudly. Bowie says, amazing, honestly. Suddenly, Millie walks back into camp, soaking wet from the ocean. Emma immediately stands up. Emma says loudly, why did you not tell anyone you found the idol? Millie freezes completely. Millie says, what idol? Chase walks over beside Emma. Chase says, dude, we literally saw you with it. Caleb looks completely blindsided. Caleb says, wait, Millie, are you hiding stuff from me? Millie panics immediately. Millie says, no, absolutely not. Emma crosses her arms. Emma says Millie is obviously playing all of us. Millie's face starts falling apart emotionally. Confessional, Millie. Millie buries her face in her hands. Millie says, oh no. She groans miserably. Millie says, why does this always happen to me right when my game starts getting good? The camera slowly zooms out from the chaotic camp while dramatic music plays. The tension at the Malicious Bears camp immediately explodes as Emma, Chase, and Caleb continue questioning Millie. Millie looks completely overwhelmed. Before anybody can keep arguing, an air horn suddenly blasts through the carnival. Chris McLean yells through speakers, challenge time, losers. Everyone groans before heading toward the challenge zone. When the campers arrive, they all stop in shock. Towering over the abandoned carnival is a massive rusted ride stretching insanely high into the clouds. Harnesses and ropes hang everywhere. Junior's jaw drops. Junior says, oh my god. Damien immediately looks terrified. Damien says, nope, absolutely not. Chris grins wickedly. Chris McLean says today's challenge is all about heights. Chef pulls back a tarp, revealing giant puzzle boards beside the tower. Chris explains the rules while the contestants stare nervously upward. Chris McLean says 2 campers at a time must climb one of 3 sections of the tower. He points upward. Chris McLean says the bottom section has the hardest puzzle pieces to find. He points higher. Chris McLean says the middle section has medium difficulty pieces, then all the way to the top. Chris McLean says and the very top has the easiest pieces. But one tiny problem. The wind howls violently at the top of the tower. Chris grins. Chris McLean says it is horrifyingly high. The campers gulp. Chris continues. Chris McLean says once your team collects every puzzle piece, you must race back down and finish the puzzle. Chef blows an air horn loudly. Chris McLean says first 2 teams to finish win immunity. Losers are sending somebody home tonight. The challenge begins instantly. At the Toxic Skunks Tower, Axel and Damien start climbing first. Damien is shaking violently. Damien says, why is it moving? Why is it moving? Axel climbs ahead easily. Axel says because it is a tower, Damien keep climbing. Damien looks down once and nearly screams. Meanwhile, at the Colorful Penguins Tower, MK and Kelly climb together. MK is gripping the bars tightly. MK says, I hate heights so much. Kelly climbs beside her supportively. Kelly says, sweetheart, do not look down. Just focus on me. MK nods nervously while continuing upward. At the Malicious Bears Tower, Emma and Chase quickly work together, grabbing puzzle pieces. Chase reaches down, helping Emma up onto a ledge. Emma smiles. Emma says, okay, That was actually kinda smooth. Chase grins proudly. Chase says, I am athletic now, remember. Emma laughs while climbing beside him. Meanwhile, Millie climbs nervously with Caleb. Confessional Millie. Millie looks stressed beyond belief. Millie says, if we lose tonight, I am so cooked. Back at the Penguins Tower, MK finally reaches a ledge and catches her breath. Suddenly, she notices Axel climbing nearby on the skunk side. MK smirks slightly. MK says quietly, Hey. Axel glances over. MK says, would you ever want to work together this season? Axel pauses before smirking back. Confessional. MK smiles mischievously. MK says Julia told me if I ever needed another villain partner, Axel would probably be the best option. Back on the tower, Axel climbs beside MK for a moment. Axel says, honestly, I am willing to go villainous this season. MK grins immediately. The two secretly fist bump while climbing. Later during the challenge, MK and Axel begin subtly sabotaging the penguins. Axel quietly loosens a rope holding one of Wayne's puzzle buckets. Wayne accidentally drops several pieces. Wayne screams dramatically. Wayne says, Brew! Meanwhile, MK pretends to panic and points at Wayne. MK says, Wayne, what are you doing? Kelly looks frustrated. Kelly says, Wayne, focus, sweetheart. Wayne awkwardly apologizes while scrambling for the pieces. At the Skunks Tower, Damien finally reaches the middle level, but freezes completely from fear. Raj yells supportively from below. Raj says, you got this, dude. Junior cheers too. Junior says, do not look down. Damien shakily grabs another puzzle piece while hyperventilating. Meanwhile, the malicious bears quickly finish collecting pieces. Millie and Caleb immediately begin assembling their puzzle, while Emma and Chase hand them pieces. Emma smiles confidently. Emma says, we are killing this. Soon the toxic skunks also finish their puzzle after Axel aggressively takes control. Axel says, move, I got this. She slams the final piece into place. Chef blows an air horn. Chef says toxic skunks win immunity. Junior, Raj, Damien, Axel, and Nichelle celebrate together. Moments later, the malicious bears finish theirs too. Chris McLean says, and the second team safe is the malicious bears. Caleb sighs in relief while Millie nearly collapses happily. That leaves only the colorful penguins. Wayne looks guilty as several missing puzzle pieces still lay scattered around the tower. MK crosses her arms dramatically. MK says Wayne literally cost us the challenge. Axel casually walks by while removing her harness. Axel says, yeah, we all saw Wayne mess up badly. Wayne looks devastated. Kelly sighs disappointedly. Lauren slowly smiles creepily at Wayne. Scary Girl says, maybe your coffin can have hockey stickers. Wayne gulps nervously. Chris grins toward the losing team. Chris McLean says, which means the colorful penguins lose again. MK secretly fist bumps Axel behind everyone's backs. Confessional. MK smirks proudly. MK says Julia may be gone, but I officially found my new partner in crime. Back at the challenge zone, Chris points dramatically toward the penguins. Chris McLean says one of you will be leaving tonight, so head back to camp and start freaking out already. The colorful penguins quietly walk back to their destroyed shelter while thunder rumbles in the distance. Everyone looks exhausted. Inside the beat-up cabin, MK immediately takes control. MK says, okay, this should honestly be an easy vote tonight. She crosses her arms confidently. MK says, you literally heard me and Axel Wayne messed up badly today. Wayne looks confused and upset. Wayne says, but I do not think I actually did. Dude, MK stays serious. MK says, Wayne, you dropped half the puzzle pieces. Slowly, Wayne starts second-guessing himself. Wayne says quietly, oh no. A few seconds later, Wayne dramatically falls onto the floor. Wayne says, I am sorry, coach. He starts crying into his hands. Kelly immediately rushes over comfortingly, while her Botox visibly slips a little. Kelly says, sweetheart, it is okay. She hugs him tightly like a worried mom. Meanwhile, Lauren slowly walks over toward MK, smiling creepily. Scary Girl says, hey MK, what size casket do you want? MK jumps slightly before nervously joking back. MK says, honestly, maybe ask Wayne that question. Lauren pauses before nodding seriously. Scary Girl says, okay, good idea. She slowly walks over toward Wayne. Wayne immediately starts crying harder. Wayne says, please do not bury me, bro. Even MK starts feeling a little guilty watching this. But then she remembers Julia. Confessional MK sighs while looking at the camera. MK says Julia would want me to play hard. Her expression hardens. MK says, and Wayne already won before. Back at camp, Kelly quietly pulls MK aside. Kelly says, honestly, sweetheart, did Wayne actually mess up that badly? MK hesitates for half a second, but then remembers her alliance with Axel. MK says, yeah, he definitely did. Kelly slowly nods, though she still looks unsure. Nearby, Wayne quietly talks to Lauren. Wayne says, please do not vote me off tonight, dude. Lauren stares blankly at him for a few seconds. Scary Girl says, I will do whatever feels right in my dark, twisted heart. Wayne gulps nervously. Night falls as the team walks toward the elimination ceremony. Lightning flashes above the abandoned carnival. Chef crosses his arms while the campers sit down. Chef Hatchet says, Wayne, apparently you completely blew today's challenge. Wayne sinks lower into his seat sadly. Chef points toward MK. Chef Hatchet says, MK, you were terrified of heights almost the whole challenge. Then toward Kelly. Chef Hatchet says, and Kelly, you got distracted a little too much during the challenge. Then toward Kelly. Chef Hatchet says, and Kelly, you got distracted a little too much during the challenge. Chris grins while lifting the marshmallow tray. Chris McLean says, all right, campers, time to see who survives tonight. He grabs the first marshmallow. Chris McLean says first marshmallow goes to Kelly. Kelly stands up excitedly. Kelly says, oh my god, thank you, babies. Chris grabs another marshmallow. Chris McLean says next. Marshmallow goes to Scary Girl. Lauren skips excitedly in circles. Scary Girl says yes, finally. She giggles creepily to herself. Scary Girl says first boot in Season 2, fourth boot in Season 1, and now I finally survive longer. Her expression softens slightly. Scary Girl whispers quietly. Scary Girl says, I am winning this for you, Z. Now only Wayne and MK remain. Wayne breathes shakily. MK tries hiding how nervous she is. Chris lifts the final marshmallow dramatically. Chris McLean says final marshmallow goes to MK. MK exhales deeply in relief. Wayne slowly stands up, tearing up. Kelly immediately hugs him tightly. Wayne says, I swear I did not mess up, dude. Kelly rubs his back gently. Kelly says, sweetheart, you already won the million once. Wayne slowly calms down. Wayne smiles weakly. Wayne says, yeah, I did already win, huh? He wipes his tears before suddenly throwing his arms in the air. Wayne says, hoot, hoot! Everyone jumps slightly. Wayne laughs sadly. Wayne says, I am rooting for Raj and Bowie and honestly Kelly too. Kelly smiles warmly and hugs him again. MK watches quietly, feeling guilty for a moment before straightening herself back up. Wayne says goodbye, everybody. He begins walking toward the dock of shame. Confessional Wayne. Wayne smiles softly while sitting on the dock. Wayne says, honestly, I am kinda sad to leave earlier this time. He shrugs. Wayne says, but I already got to play twice, and I already won before. He grins proudly. Wayne says now, it is Raj and Bowie's turn to dominate, dude. He points finger guns at the camera. Wayne says, in America, you will definitely see me and Raj back on your hockey screens someday. Wayne throws his arms up again. Wayne says, hoot, hoot! The drone of despair suddenly grabs him and lifts him away into the night sky. Back at camp, MK quietly watches the drone disappear. Confessional MK smirks confidently. MK says, honestly, I am proud of myself for this move. She crosses her arms. MK says Wayne was a massive threat. His social game was way too good, and he already won a season. She smiles villainously. MK says me and Axel are about to dominate this game. Chris grins toward the camera while lightning flashes behind him. Chris McLean says what insane chaos will happen next time on Total Drama Island. The screen cuts to black. Episode 6 opens with pouring rain smashing down onto the abandoned carnival. Thunder crashes loudly above the island. Water floods through the old carnival pathways while rides creak in the storm. Chris McLean stands outside completely soaked, holding an umbrella that immediately flips inside out. Chris McLean yells, last time on Total Drama Island. Chris loudly recaps Wayne getting blindsided and MK becoming more villainous, while Scary Girl officially became crazy AGI for like 20 minutes before immediately turning terrifying again. Chris grins. Chris McLean says, and now only 13 campers remain. The intro plays. The episode cuts to the colorful penguins returning from elimination in the pouring rain. Lauren happily skips through puddles, doing backflips and cartwheels while giggling to herself. MK and Kelly walk behind her, absolutely miserable and freezing. Kelly wraps her arms around MK protectively while they walk. MK says if we lose again, we are definitely voting off
Kelly
that
says,
freak,
"Sweetheart,
right? Maybe do not call her a freak." Kelly sighs softly. MK rolls her eyes dramatically. Kelly says everybody deserves kindness. That reminds MK of her own mother a little. She quietly smiles. MK says, yeah, okay, Mom. Kelly smiles proudly. Morning arrives, but the storm still has not stopped. At the Black Bears camp, everyone is hiding inside their tiny shelter. Bowie sleeps dramatically in the corner, still wearing sunglasses. Emma and Chase cuddle together underneath a blanket. The only people awake are Caleb and Millie. Caleb walks over shirtless in pajama pants while stretching. Millie instantly blushes and looks away awkwardly. Caleb quietly says about yesterday. Millie already knows what he means. Millie sighs nervously. Millie says yes. Okay, I really do have the idol. Caleb looks disappointed but not angry. Caleb says, I just wish you trusted me enough to tell me. Millie feels guilty. Caleb wraps an arm around her shoulders comfortingly. Millie blushes even harder. Confessional Millie. Millie says, okay. Why is Caleb suddenly so attractive? She immediately covers her face. Millie says Priya literally dated him. Millie, get yourself together. Confessional. Caleb. Caleb says me, Emma, Chase, and Millie need to stick together. He crosses his arms seriously. Caleb says Bowie is way too dangerous socially and strategically. Back outside, Caleb and Millie walk through the rain searching for anything suspicious. Millie quietly brings up Priya. Millie says, do you think you would ever marry her? Caleb blushes hard instantly. Caleb says probably. He smiles softly. Caleb says, I just need the right moment. As they continue walking, they suddenly find a soaked paper attached to a tree. Caleb pulls it down. It says, read to your whole team. They exchange worried looks. Meanwhile, back at the colorful penguins camp, Lauren suddenly finds the same note laying in the mud. Scary Girl says, ooh, mysterious paper. MK and Kelly rush over immediately. At Junior's team camp, Axel spots another note near the woods. She originally thinks it is an idol. Axel says, yes. Then she reads the front. Axel groans. Axel says seriously. The camera cuts between all three teams reading the message together. The note says, get ready for today's challenge. You will need to create as many weapons as possible. The team with the most weapons will earn a special advantage. Everyone immediately panics. Teams begin building weapons out of sticks, ropes, rocks, and scrap metal from the carnival. Paint gets smeared across faces. Everyone starts looking like apocalypse survivors. Chris finally calls everyone to the challenge zone. The campers arrive, carrying giant bags filled with handmade weapons. Chris grins proudly. Chris McLean says, welcome to the apocalypse campers. Axel immediately starts screaming excitedly. Axel says, zombies. She starts flipping around, searching the woods. Everyone stares at her nervously. Chris says the zombies are fake, unfortunately for Axel. Axel looks disappointed. Chris explains that robotic zombies have been hidden around the flooded carnival. Each zombie destroyed earns points. The team with the most points wins immunity. Chris says, and because Junior's team made the most weapons, they automatically start with 2 bonus points. Axel screams victoriously. Axel says, I have trained my whole life for this. The challenge begins. Everyone sprints into the rain. Axel immediately charges ahead like a maniac, swinging weapons everywhere. Her whole team struggles to keep up. Meanwhile, Lauren is absolutely thriving. While everyone else is scared and stressed, Lauren is smiling ear to ear, sprinting through the flooded carnival, shooting zombies everywhere. Scary Girl says, this is the best day of my life. She jumps onto old carnival stands and spins around while shooting zombie after zombie. Lauren laughs creepily while robotic zombies explode around her. Scary Girl says horror is beautiful. Even Chris looks concerned watching her enjoy it this much. At one point, Lauren suddenly stops running and quietly sits down underneath a broken carnival ride, while rain pours around her. Everything goes quiet for a second. She starts thinking about Z. Lauren softly smiles to herself. Scary Girl says you would have loved this, babe. She sits there sadly for a few moments before standing back up again. Scary Girl says, okay, enough emotions, back to violence. She immediately sprints away, laughing again. Meanwhile, Raj notices Bowie running nearby through the rain. Raj smiles and runs toward him. Raj taps Bowie's shoulder. Bowie turns around annoyed at first before realizing it is Raj. Bowie blushes slightly. Bowie says, Oh, hey, babe. Raj smiles warmly. Raj says, I miss you. Bowie nervously looks back toward where his team disappeared. Bowie says, Raj, we are literally in the middle of a challenge. Confessional Bowie. Bowie sighs frustrated. Bowie says, this is exactly what I was worried about. Bowie says, I love Raj more than anything, but I need to focus this season. Back in the rain, Raj pulls Bowie underneath a tree and kisses him. They both fall laughing into the mud while making out. Raj starts getting more intense and reaches for Bowie's shirt. Bowie immediately stops him. Bowie says, Raj, we cannot do this right now. Raj looks embarrassed and hurt. Raj says, I just need you right now. Bowie finally snaps. Bowie says, stop touching me. Raj freezes. Bowie instantly regrets saying it. Raj starts tearing up in the rain. Before either can speak, Axel suddenly bursts through the woods. Axel screams, zombie! She accidentally smacks Raj directly in the face with a fake bat. Raj falls into the mud, groaning. Meanwhile, Chase and Emma are actually doing really well at first. They work together blasting zombies while running through the rain. Chase says, babe, we are destroying this challenge. Emma laughs while shooting another zombie. Emma says, literally. But while running through the mud, Emma suddenly slips. Chase accidentally falls directly on top of her. They stare at each other for a second while rain pours around them. Then Chase kisses her. Emma instantly kisses him back harder. Soon the challenge completely leaves their minds. After a while, Chase pulls away laughing. Chase says, wait, we should probably keep competing. Emma nods while giggling. Emma says, yeah, probably. They shoot maybe 2 more zombies before immediately getting distracted again. Eventually, they end up cuddled together underneath an old carnival tent while rain pours outside. Emma lays against Chase's chest while Chase wraps his arms around her. Eventually, both of them accidentally fall asleep together during the challenge. Later, Emma suddenly wakes up. Emma says, oh my god, Chase. Chase wakes up confused. Both of them realize the challenge is basically over. Emma starts laughing uncontrollably. Chase laughs too. Chase says, okay, maybe we got a little distracted. Emma shakes her head, smiling. Emma says a little. The two of them quietly rush back toward the challenge, pretending nothing happened. Meanwhile, Caleb and Damien work together blasting robotic zombies. Caleb tackles one dramatically into the ground. Damien laughs. Caleb says, me, you, Millie, and Nichelle should totally form the Black Alliance. Damien laughs harder. Damien says, bro, we gotta survive long enough first. Caleb suddenly notices Damien blushing when Nichelle's name gets mentioned. Caleb smirks. Damien immediately changes the subject. Elsewhere, Kelly helps multiple people learn how to use the fake zombie blasters. Even people not on her team. Axel notices and gets annoyed. Axel says, stop helping the other teams. Kelly looks confused. Kelly says, I am a mom, sweetie. I help everybody. Axel stares at her strangely before running off again. Junior eventually gets lost alone in the storm. The rain overwhelms him and he starts crying. Suddenly, Kelly finds him curled up beside a carnival booth. Kelly immediately comforts him. Kelly says, hey, little buddy, it is okay. She pulls him into a hug. Junior cries harder, admitting he got scared. Kelly gently rubs his back and sings little nursery rhymes while holding him in the rain. Confessional Junior. Junior says Kelly is super nice, but the nursery rhymes are kinda embarrassing. He shrugs. Junior says, I am literally 10. Back at the challenge, zombies are exploding everywhere. Nichelle jumps across carnival rides doing stunt flips while taking out robots. Lauren carries giant zombie props over her shoulders while laughing maniacally. Finally, the rain begins calming down. Chris blows an air horn loudly. Chris McLean says, challenge over. The campers gather exhausted and soaked. Emma and Chase awkwardly avoid eye contact with their team while trying not to laugh. Chris reveals the final scores. Chris McLean says the winners are the toxic skunks and the colorful penguins. Axel throws both fists into the air. Axel says, I knew the zombie apocalypse would come someday. The camera pans over, revealing Kelly and Junior still sitting together in the woods. Chris yells, where were you two? Kelly immediately glares at him. Kelly says this child was scared. Stop yelling. She gently picks Junior up and carries him back toward his team. Before leaving, she kisses him on the forehead. Kelly says, you gonna be okay, little bud? Junior smiles softly. Junior says, yeah. Kelly walks back toward her team proudly. Chris turns toward the Black Bears. Chris McLean says, which means Bowie, Emma, Chase, Caleb, and Millie. He smirks dramatically. Chris McLean says, one of you will be going home tonight. Raj awkwardly looks toward Bowie. Bowie looks frustrated with himself and guilty at the same time. Confessional Bowie. Bowie sighs deeply. Bowie says, "I feel awful for snapping at Raj." He looks conflicted. Bowie says, "But if I want to win this game, I cannot keep getting distracted." The camera slowly fades out as thunder rumbles over the flooded carnival. The rain was still pouring as Bowie, Caleb, Millie, Emma, and Chase walked back to their camp after losing the challenge. Nobody was really talking. Bowie immediately sat down against the shelter wall and rubbed his face really hard. He looked exhausted emotionally after everything that happened with Raj during the challenge. Emma noticed instantly. She slowly sat down beside him while Chase stayed behind for a second. Emma looked over at Bowie sadly and asked him if he was okay. Bowie started tearing up a little bit and admitted that he felt horrible about what happened with Raj. He explained that Raj kept trying to spend time with him during the challenge and that they started kissing in the rain, but Bowie just wanted to focus on helping his team win immunity. Bowie admitted that Raj tried pulling him back down and Bowie eventually snapped at him. Emma immediately hugged Bowie tightly and told him that it was okay. She explained that wanting to focus on the game did not make him a bad boyfriend. Bowie sighed and admitted that he still felt guilty because Raj was already emotional after Wayne got voted off. Emma rubbed Bowie's shoulder and told him that Raj loved him way too much for this to ruin their relationship. Bowie smiled a little bit and thanked Emma for always being there for him. Emma smiled back and told him that she would always support him. After a little while, Bowie finally sat back up and wiped his tears away before smirking slightly and saying that it was time to get back into game mode. Emma laughed softly and said there was the Bowie she knew. Emma then walked over to Chase, who was sitting outside throwing rocks into puddles. Chase smiled immediately when he saw her. Emma sat beside him and asked him if they were officially together again. Chase smiled really hard and said, "Obviously, babe." Emma laughed and leaned her head against his shoulder while telling him that as long as he stayed mature this season, she was willing to try again. Chase promised that he was trying his best this time. The two of them then started laughing, remembering the challenge. Emma pointed out that they literally fell asleep in the middle of a zombie apocalypse challenge because they got too distracted making out. Chase started laughing really hard and joked that they were supposed to be saving the carnival instead of cuddling in the rain together. Emma shoved him jokingly and reminded him that he kissed her first. Chase instantly defended himself by saying she kissed him back. Emma tried not to laugh but failed, and both of them ended up laughing together again. Meanwhile, Bowie quietly pulled Millie aside for a private conversation. Bowie admitted that he genuinely wanted to work with her moving forward in the game, especially now that she had the immunity idol. Millie looked nervous hearing him mention the idol, but Bowie stayed calm. Bowie then admitted that he was starting to think Caleb might become unbeatable once merge happened. Millie looked surprised and asked if he was serious. Bowie explained that Caleb was athletic, social, smart, and incredibly likable. He said that everybody trusted Caleb and that made him dangerous. Millie slowly agreed and admitted that Caleb really would be hard to beat later on. A little later, Caleb walked over to Millie and asked her what the vote was tonight. Millie quickly answered that she thought it was probably Chase because him and Emma were becoming a dangerous duo again. Caleb nodded and the two of them walked over to Bowie together to make sure. Bowie calmly agreed and said that Chase was probably the vote. Caleb looked satisfied and thanked him. That night, the 5 campers walked through the storm toward the elimination ceremony. Everyone sat down quietly while Chef Hatchet began pointing out everyone's flaws from the challenge. Chef first called out Emma and Chase for making out and literally falling asleep during the zombie challenge instead of helping their team. Everyone immediately looked over at them while Emma and Chase both turned bright red. Chase awkwardly laughed while Emma tried hiding her face. Chef then pointed at Millie and said that she spent the entire challenge distracted because she was too busy worrying about her hidden immunity idol. Millie instantly looked down sadly. Finally, Chef pointed at Bowie and said that he let his relationship drama with Raj distract him during the challenge too. Bowie tried explaining himself but could barely get the words out because he still felt guilty. Chris finally stood up with the marshmallow tray and announced that it was time to vote. After everyone finished voting, Chris returned with the marshmallows. He announced that the first marshmallow went to Emma. Emma smiled in relief and grabbed it quickly. The second marshmallow went to Bowie. Bowie let out a huge sigh of relief. The third marshmallow went to Millie. Millie gasped happily and looked really relieved too. Now it was down to Caleb and Chase. Caleb looked calm while Chase looked terrified. Chris smirked dramatically before finally announcing that the final marshmallow went to Chase. Chase immediately jumped up in shock. Caleb completely froze. Millie's eyes widened and she slowly turned toward Bowie, realizing exactly what happened. Caleb quietly looked at Bowie and asked if he seriously did this again. Bowie smirked a little bit before admitting that Caleb was too dangerous to let Reach merge. He explained that he convinced Emma and Chase to vote Caleb out because Caleb would dominate the game later on if they let him stay. Caleb looked hurt while Emma and Chase both looked guilty. Caleb asked them if they seriously voted him out too. Emma admitted quietly that they had to do what was best for their game. Millie stood up and immediately hugged Caleb tightly. Caleb hugged her back and told her to win this game for him. Millie smiled sadly before joking that he should go have fun with Priya at the motel and maybe finally propose to her. Caleb instantly turned bright red while Millie laughed softly. Caleb hugged her one more time before finally turning back toward Bowie. He admitted that Bowie got him with the exact same trick twice now. Caleb laughed a little bit despite being upset and called Bowie evil. Bowie corrected him by saying strategic instead. Everyone sat quietly while Caleb walked down the dock of shame. During his confessional, Caleb admitted that he was upset about leaving early but still happy that he got another chance to play the game and make friendships. He admitted that he was excited to see Priya again and maybe finally ask her an important question soon. Caleb also admitted that even though Bowie betrayed him again, he still respected him as one of the best total drama players ever. Caleb finished by saying that he was rooting for Millie to win the season. The drone of despair finally picked Caleb up and flew him away through the storm while he waved goodbye. Chris smirked toward the camera and announced that next time on Total Drama Island, there would be even more drama, betrayal, and relationship problems waiting for the campers before the screen faded to black. Chris McLean says dramatically last time on Total Drama Island, quick clips flash of Caleb getting eliminated. MK smirks in the confessional saying her and Axel are gonna dominate the game. Raj cries in the rain while Bowie runs away from him. Quick flashes of Caleb getting blindsided again. Caleb points at Bowie angrily. Caleb says, "You did this to me twice, dude." Millie hugs Caleb goodbye at the dock of shame. The drown of despair launches Caleb away. Chris grins into the camera. Chris McLean says, and now the game is about to get shaken up in a huge way. 12 remain in the journey for $3 million. The Total Drama intro plays. The episode opens early in the morning at Bowie's camp. The sun is finally back out after the storm. Water drips off the carnival rides. Bowie, Emma, and Chase walk back into camp after elimination. Bowie looks exhausted. Emma walks beside him quietly. Millie walks behind everybody, silently holding her hidden immunity idol. Millie stares down at it nervously. Millie says in a confessional, "This idol is literally my only hope right now." Millie sighs. Millie says Caleb got voted out, and now everybody probably thinks I'm next. Millie looks down sadly. Millie says, "I just need to use this thing wisely." The camera cuts to the colorful penguins camp. MK, Kelly, and Scary Girl sit around their small shelter. MK stretches while yawning. MK says, "Okay, there is absolutely no way these teams are staying like this." Kelly nods in agreement. Kelly says only 3 people left on a team feels really weird, sweetheart. Kelly laughs softly. Kelly says it kind of feels like the game is ending already. MK smirks. MK says, "Trust me, Kelly, you're definitely not winning this thing." Kelly gasps dramatically. Kelly says, "Wow, okay, rude." MK laughs a little. Kelly lightly shoves MK's shoulder. In the background, Scary Girl quietly carves a stick into the shape of a skull. Scary Girl giggles to herself. Scary Girl says in a creepy whisper, "This skull needs a boyfriend too." Scary Girl suddenly kisses the skull. MK slowly looks over, disturbed. MK says, "Nope, absolutely not." Scary Girl says in a confessional Z would have loved this skull. Scary Girl smiles creepily at the camera. Scary Girl says, "I want to make the merge for my boyfriend." Scary Girl suddenly pulls out a picture of Z covered in hearts. The camera quickly cuts away. The episode cuts to Junior's camp. Raj sits alone near the lake. He has his face buried in his hands. Raj quietly cries to himself. Junior awkwardly walks over. Junior says, "Are you okay, dude?" Raj wipes his eyes. Raj says, "Not really." Junior sits beside him awkwardly. Junior says, "I don't really know what to say right now." Raj laughs weakly through tears. Junior says, Junior shrugs. Junior says Bowie probably still likes you. Raj sighs sadly. Junior says, "Yeah, I suck at this emotional stuff." Junior slowly stands up. Junior says, "Okay, good talk." Junior awkwardly walks away. Raj looks confused. A few seconds later, Axel walks over. Axel crosses her arms. Axel says, "What's wrong with you?" Raj looks surprised. Raj says, "Why do you care?" Axel shrugs. Axel says, "Because weak teammates annoy me." Raj looks down sadly. Raj says, "Bowie got mad at me during the challenge." Raj sighs. Raj says, "I tried kissing him and stuff during the challenge, and he snapped at me." Raj tears up again. Raj says, "I think I embarrassed him." Axel's expression softens a little. Axel slowly sits beside him. Axel says relationship problems suck. Raj looks surprised hearing that from Axel. Axel says, "Trust me. I've dealt with stuff like that before." Raj wipes his eyes. Axel awkwardly pats his shoulder, then she suddenly pulls Raj into a quick hug. Raj smiles weakly. Raj says, "Thanks, Axel." Axel immediately stands back up. Axel says, "Don't make it weird." "Hockey boy," Axel says in a confessional. "I don't usually comfort people." Axel shrugs. Axel says, "But heartbreak can mess somebody up bad." The camera cuts deeper into the forest. Damien and Nichelle walk through the trees together. Damien says, Damien says, "I wanted to talk strategy really quick." Nichelle nods. They both sit down on a log. Damien says Caleb got voted out last night. Damien sighs. Damien says, "But before he left, he said, me, you, and Millie should work together at Merge." Nichelle nods slowly. Nichelle says, "Honestly, I trust Millie." Nichelle smiles. Nichelle says, "And I trust you too." Damien blushes a little. Suddenly, Chris McLean's voice blasts through speakers across the island. Chris yells, "Campers, meet me at the main lodge for a huge announcement." Everybody groans. The contestants slowly arrive at the carnival lodge. Chris stands beside two giant duffel bags. Everyone looks nervous. Axel immediately points around frantically. Axel says, "Wait, are the zombies back?" Chris says sadly, "No." Axel looks disappointed. Chris grins. Chris says, "But I do have something even better." Chris points at the duffel bags. Chris says each of you will reach inside and grab one colored token. The contestants all nervously walk forward. Everyone reaches into the bags one at a time. Chris smirks. Chris says, "Now open your hands." Everybody opens their fists. Half the contestants hold pink tokens. The others hold blue. Everyone starts panicking. Chris laughs loudly. Chris says, "That's right, campers." Chris says today is a team swap. Everybody gasps. The camera quickly flashes between everybody's shocked faces. Chris begins reading the new teams. Chris says on the Bluebirds we have Kelly. Kelly cheers. Chris says Junior. Junior smiles happily. Chris says Bowie. Bowie adjusts his sunglasses dramatically. Chris says Millie. Millie looks nervous. Chris says Scary Girl. Scary Girl hisses at the camera. Chris says, and MK smirks immediately. Chris points to the other side. Chris says, and on the pink flamingos we have Damien. Damien nods. Chris says Emma. Emma fist pumps. Chris says Chase. Chase throws both arms into the air. Chris says Nichelle. Nichelle smiles confidently. Chris says Axel. Axel cracks her knuckles. Chris says, and Raj smiles weakly. Instantly, Junior runs over and hugs Kelly. Kelly hugs him back happily. Junior says, "Yes, we're on the same team." Kelly smiles warmly. Across the lodge, Damien and Nichelle quietly notice Millie is still not on their team. Both of them look disappointed. Meanwhile, MK glances over at Axel. Axel glances back. The two slowly walk behind the crowd away from everyone else. MK quietly says, "Merge is getting close." Axel smirks. Axel says, "We're still working together, right?" MK nods. MK says, "Obviously." The two shake hands. MK says in a confessional, "Julia told me if I needed a real villain partner, it should be Axel." MK smirks. MK says, "Honestly, Julia was right." Chris claps loudly. Chris says, "Bluebirds, you'll be staying at Kelly's old camp." Chris points dramatically. Chris says, "Pink flamingos, you'll take over Bowie's old camp." Chris grins into the camera. Chris says, "Now, get moving, campers, because your next challenge starts very soon." Everyone immediately begins heading toward their new camps. The camera slowly pans upward over the carnival. Episode 7 continues. The episode continues at the Bluebirds camp. Kelly and Junior walk side by side through the forest. Junior is smiling the whole way back. Kelly wraps her arm around him warmly. Kelly says, "Look at us, little buddy." Kelly laughs softly. Kelly says the two new kids on the block made it onto the same team. Junior smiles. Junior says, honestly, I'm really happy we're together. Kelly puts her hand on his shoulder. Kelly says, we're gonna make it really far together, sweetheart. Junior looks down for a second. Junior says nobody's really treated me like this before. Kelly immediately hugs him. Kelly says, well, you deserve it, honey. Junior smiles really hard. In the background, MK watches awkwardly. MK says in a confessional, okay, this is either really sweet or really weird. MK shrugs. MK says, honestly, probably both. The camera cuts over to MK unpacking her stuff inside the cabin. MK sighs while throwing her bag down. MK says, I cannot believe I'm not on Axel's team. Scary Girl suddenly appears upside down, hanging from the ceiling. Scary Girl says maybe you guys can still commit crimes together at Merge. MK screams. MK says, stop doing that. Scary Girl giggles and drops onto the floor. MK says in a confessional, me and Axel not being together honestly might help us more. MK smirks. MK says, less suspicious. MK says, and honestly, MK smiles a little. MK says Julia would have loved this duo. The camera cuts outside near the beach. Millie sits alone, holding her idol again. She looks over at Bowie talking with Kelly and Junior. Then she looks over at MK and Scary Girl arguing. Millie sighs nervously. Millie says in a confessional, I hate this team. Millie says Bowie blindsided Caleb. Millie sighs. Millie says Scary Girl is terrifying. Millie says MK is sketchy. Millie says, and I feel like everybody sees me as expendable. Millie grips her idol tightly. Millie says I might actually need to use this thing soon. The episode cuts to the Pink Flamingos camp. Damien and Nichelle sit together near the shelter. Both of them look annoyed. Nichelle crosses her arms. Nichelle says, I hate that Millie's not here anymore. Damien nods. Damien says Caleb wanted the three of us working together. Damien sighs. Damien says now we gotta wait until Merge. Nearby, Raj and Axel walk into camp together. Raj laughs awkwardly. Axel lightly punches his shoulder. Raj says, ow, dude. Axel smirks. Raj says in a confessional, honestly, I never thought me and Axel would get along. Raj shrugs. Raj says, but she's actually kinda cool sometimes. Axel says in a confessional, Raj is emotional. Axel rolls her eyes. Axel says, but at least he's loyal. Emma and Chase quietly veer off together deeper into the woods. Damien notices immediately. An idea pops into his head. Damien quickly stands up. Damien says, okay, hold on. Damien says, Nichelle, can you grab Axel and Raj really quick? Nichelle nods and walks over. A few moments later, everybody sits inside the shelter together. Axel leans against the wall impatiently. Axel says, what is this about? Damien looks serious. Damien says Emma and Chase need to go. Raj looks surprised. Damien says they're a duo. Damien says if we let them hit Merge together, they're gonna be impossible to split apart. Nichelle nods. Nichelle says honestly that makes sense. Raj thinks quietly for a second, then slowly nods too. Axel smirks. Axel says easy enough. Damien smiles. Damien says, then it's settled. Damien says, if we lose, Damien says one of them goes home. Suddenly, Chris McLean's voice blasts through the speakers. Chris says, Challenga time campers. The contestants all arrive at the beach in swimsuits. Large poles stick out from the sand everywhere. Everybody looks confused. Chris grins dramatically. Chris says today's challenge is all about strength. Chris points toward the poles. Chris says each team will pick players to stand on the poles. Chris says while the rest of the team acts as attackers. Chris says your attackers must drag the opposing team members off their poles and across the finish line. Chris laughs. Chris says first team to fully eliminate the other team wins immunity. Everybody starts strategizing immediately. Raj quietly notices Bowie standing across the beach. Raj instantly looks nervous again. The teams separate. For the Pink Flamingos. The pole players are Damien, Nichelle, and Emma. The attackers are Axel, Raj, and Chase. For the Bluebirds. The pole players are Bowie, Millie, and Junior. The attackers are Kelly, MK, and Scary Girl. Chris blows an air horn. Chris screams, go. The challenge instantly becomes chaos. Axel sprints forward like a maniac. Junior screams. Axel immediately sweeps Junior completely off the pole. Junior flies into the sand. Junior says, Kelly's eyes go wide. Kelly instantly goes full mom mode. Kelly tackles Axel straight into the sand. Axel looks shocked. Kelly says, don't you ever touch a little boy like that. Kelly says he could have gotten hurt. Axel shoves Kelly off. Axel says, "Get off me, old lady." Kelly gasps dramatically. Kelly slaps Axel. Kelly says, "I am not old." Junior scrambles back onto his pole terrified. Meanwhile, Scary Girl is absolutely loving the challenge. Scary Girl giggles maniacally while sprinting through the sand. Scary Girl says violence is so beautiful. She yanks Nichelle off her pole, then immediately goes after Emma. MK works surprisingly well with Kelly. The two quickly drag Emma across the sand. Emma screams while Chase tries helping her. Chris yells, "Emma is eliminated." Bowie immediately goes into defense mode. Bowie kicks sand everywhere, trying to stop attackers from reaching him. Millie barely hangs onto her pole. Raj keeps glancing nervously at Bowie. Eventually, only one player remains on each side. Bowie for the Bluebirds, Damien for the Pink Flamingos. Everybody else becomes attackers. Raj slowly walks toward Bowie. Bowie looks nervous, but also softens a little seeing him. Raj grabs Bowie's arm awkwardly, but Raj barely pulls. The rest of his team gets annoyed. Axel yells, "Raj, actually, try." Raj sighs and finally starts pulling harder. Suddenly, Raj accidentally hits Bowie between the legs. Bowie gasps loudly. Raj immediately lets go. Raj says, "Oh my god, it was an accident." Raj falls backwards into the sand, panicking. Bowie blushes hard in embarrassment. Raj says, "I'm sorry, babe, I swear." Bowie sighs. Bowie says, "Raj, why are you acting like I'm mad at you?" Raj looks confused. Raj says, "Because of what happened yesterday." Bowie softens a little. Bowie says, "I was frustrated, okay?" Bowie says, "But I'm just..." Bowie is stuttering. Raj is still guilty, but before they can say anything else, Axel, Chase, Emma, Damien, and Nichelle all rush forward together. They completely yank Bowie off the pole. Chris screams, "Bluebirds are down to 0. At the other side, Kelly, Scary Girl, and MK desperately drag Damien through the sand. It's neck and neck. Everybody screams. Both teams race toward the finish line, but finally Bowie gets dragged across first. Chris blows the air horn loudly. Chris says the Pink Flamingos win immunity. Damien, Axel, Nichelle, Emma, Chase, and Raj all celebrate. Raj looks happy for the win, but then immediately looks back toward Bowie sadly. Bowie sits in the sand, exhausted and disappointed. The Bluebirds slowly regroup behind him. Chris grins at the losing team. Chris says, "Bluebirds." Chris says one of you will be heading home tonight. The camera zooms in on Millie nervously touching her idol in her pocket. As the Bluebirds walked back to camp after losing the challenge, nobody talked. The whole team just looked defeated. Scary Girl skipped ahead while humming creepily to herself. Kelly stayed beside Junior the whole walk back because he still looked upset about falling off the pole first. Bowie walked in front looking stressed out. Millie quietly held onto her pocket where her idol was hidden. Once they got back to camp, Bowie immediately sat down near the fire pit. He rubbed his face in frustration. Confessional Bowie. Bowie says sadly that he really wanted to work with Millie this season, but now the idol is becoming too dangerous. Bowie says if Millie survives long enough with that idol, she could easily sneak her way to the end of the game. Bowie says tonight is their only chance to stop her before merge. Back at camp, Millie quickly pulls Kelly and Junior aside. Millie tells them that tonight needs to be Scary Girl. Junior instantly agrees because he is terrified of her. Kelly agrees too, and says that Scary Girl has become too unstable. Millie nods nervously. She keeps touching her pocket every few seconds. Meanwhile, Bowie gathers everyone else together besides Millie. MK sits down beside Bowie, while Scary Girl hangs upside down listening. Bowie quietly tells them that Millie has an idol. MK's eyes widen immediately. Scary Girl giggles and says that sounds fun. Bowie says tonight they need to blindside Millie before she reaches merge. MK agrees and says that Millie is becoming way too smart strategically. Scary Girl says she hopes somebody cries tonight. Bowie tells them to act normal around Millie so she does not suspect anything. But what Bowie does not know, Millie is standing behind the shelter listening to the entire conversation. Millie's face completely drops. She slowly backs away before anybody notices her. Then she walks down to the beach alone. Confessional Millie. Millie says while tearing up that she cannot believe Bowie turned on her already. Millie says she actually trusted him. Millie looks down at her idol sadly. Millie says she really did not want to use it this early, but now she knows she has no choice. Millie says that if she is using this idol tonight, then she is making a huge move with it. Back at camp, Junior sits beside Kelly quietly. Junior admits that he is nervous tonight. Kelly instantly wraps her arm around him. Kelly tells him that nobody would vote him out because everybody loves him there. Junior smiles a little hearing that. MK overhears the conversation from nearby. Confessional MK him. MK smirks and says that hearing Kelly say everybody loves Junior just proves exactly why he is dangerous. MK says Junior is way too liked socially, and if he reaches merge, he could absolutely win the season. MK says that maybe tonight is the perfect time to get rid of him. Soon, Chris announces that it is time for the elimination ceremony. The Bluebirds slowly walk through the dark carnival toward the ceremony area. Junior stays close beside Kelly the whole walk there. Millie looks completely stressed out. Bowie still looks confident. Scary Girl keeps twirling around, laughing to herself. Once they all sit down, Chef starts pointing out everybody's flaws in the challenge. Chef says that Junior fell off almost immediately. Junior looks embarrassed. Chef then points out Kelly for tackling Axel instead of focusing on the challenge. Kelly defends herself and says that Axel shoved a child off a pole. Chef rolls his eyes. Then Chef points out Millie for struggling physically during the challenge. Millie looks down sadly. Finally, Chef points out Bowie for being the last person standing and still losing the challenge. Bowie sighs heavily. Chris grins and says that it is time to hand out the marshmallows. But before Chris can even grab the tray, Millie suddenly stands up. Everyone looks shocked. Millie reaches into her pocket and pulls out the immunity idol. Everybody gasps loudly. Bowie's face immediately drops. Millie says that she would like to use her idol tonight. Chris smiles and takes the idol from her. Chris announces that every vote cast against Millie will not count. Bowie immediately stands up frustrated. Bowie asks Millie how she knew everybody was voting for her. Millie looks directly at Bowie. Millie says that she overheard everything. Millie says Bowie promised he wanted to work with her, but instead, he tried to blindside her. Millie says now there are consequences for that. Bowie instantly starts thinking that he is about to go home. Chris finally starts handing out the marshmallows. The first marshmallow goes to Scary Girl. Scary Girl skips up happily and says finally, the next marshmallow goes to Kelly. Kelly fixes her slipping Botox happily. The next marshmallow goes to MK. MK looks genuinely shocked and relieved. Then it is just Bowie and Junior left. Bowie slowly stands up. He puts his hands over his face and starts wiping his tears a little. Bowie quietly says to tell Raj that he loves him. Junior looks terrified, standing beside him. Chris drags out the suspense for a long time. Then finally, Chris says that the final marshmallow goes to Bowie. Bowie's jaw completely drops. Junior freezes in shock. Kelly immediately stands up, looking horrified. Everybody slowly turns toward Millie. Chris sadly says that Junior has been eliminated. Bowie instantly looks at Millie angrily. Bowie asks why she would target the little kid instead of him. Millie slowly stands up. Millie says that Junior was too good socially. Millie says everybody loved him. Millie says that if he made merge, he could easily make finale and win the entire game. Millie says she came here to play strategically this season, not emotionally. Junior instantly starts crying quietly. Kelly immediately runs over and hugs him tightly. Junior says that he cannot believe his dream is already over. Junior says now he has to go back to the orphanage again. Kelly looks heartbroken hearing that. Kelly grabs Junior's face gently and tells him not to say things like that. Kelly says he has an amazing future ahead of him. Kelly kisses him on the forehead while Junior cries into her shoulder. Even MK starts looking emotional, watching it happen. Scary Girl surprisingly stays quiet too. Then everybody slowly comes over and hugs Junior goodbye. Even Millie hugs him. Millie apologizes and says that he really would have won someday. Junior says he understands why she did it. Junior says that if he was older, he probably would have made the same move too. Kelly hugs Junior again and tells him that she loves him like her own son. Junior smiles through tears hearing that. Chris finally says that it is time for Junior to go. Junior gives Kelly one final long hug. Kelly kisses his forehead one more time and tells him that she is proud of him. Junior waves goodbye sadly before walking down the dock of shame. Confessional Junior. Junior says sadly that he is upset he did not make merge, but he says he is still happy that he got the chance to compete at all. Junior smiles sadly and says that maybe one day he will come back stronger. Then the drone of despair picks Junior up and flies away. Back at the elimination area, Bowie looks directly at Millie. Bowie says that taking out Junior was cold. Millie says that it was smart. Millie says she came here to win this season, not hand somebody else the $1 million. Everybody still looks upset with her. The whole team slowly walks away from Millie afterward, leaving her sitting alone by herself. Confessional Millie. Millie says quietly that she does feel guilty, but she also says that she does not regret the move at all. Millie smirks slightly and says that, for the first time ever, she is finally playing total drama like everybody else. Chris then closes out the episode. Chris says, "Oh, you thought that was bad? Just wait until you see what happens next time on Total Drama Island." The screen cuts to black.
Thanks everyone for watching episodes 4 through 7. The next episode will be out soon. So thanks everyone for watching, and just stay tuned for the next episodes.